All right. Hey, well, welcome to this webinar from Future of Faith. We're excited to have you join us today. My name is Greg Arthur. I'm part of the team here. This Faithful Futures webinar is going to examine sacred tools for engaging younger generations. We're really excited to have you join us. We have an incredible array of panelists and different people that we're going to be talking to and hearing from today. So thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us. We know your time is precious, and we really appreciate you giving some of it to us and to this project. Just want to draw your attention to some things. At the bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. So if you have questions for any of the panelists, for the authors we're going to be speaking to, things that pop up, if you've read the book or you know anything about Future of Faith, or if you're doing work with youth, whatever you have, please just drop those questions in there and we're going to gather those. We may try to be able to answer some of those along the way. If not, we're planning on having a Q&A at the end where we can see what people's what most common questions are and grab a hold of some of those answers and doing that. Also want to just make sure and send you to a couple of websites where you can find more information about what's happening in the book. Go to faithfulfuturesbook.com where you'll find the book and resources and different exciting things that we're doing that are attached to that. Also, futureoffaith.org. We also will be sending a lot of these links out in the follow-up email to the webinar, so you'll get a chance to go back and to find those. I just want to highlight something I think that's really cool that we're doing, which is the Faithful Futures Fund. A big part of who we are at Future of Faith is we're not just trying to promote our work, but we're always looking to promote and to celebrate others who are doing amazing things and to give them a platform and to recognize them and to celebrate them. And this Faithful Futures Fund is designed specifically for that. We want to help find and identify people that are really doing some significant work, especially amongst with younger generations, and we want to give them recognition and celebrate them. So if you go to the faithfulfuturesbook.com, you'll find links there for the Faithful Futures Fund, and you can nominate someone for a $250 cash award that would help celebrate and support their impact. So it's no strings attached to that. It's just us getting a chance to celebrate amazing people who are doing great things. So make sure you check that out. I'm going to invite our panelists to pop onto the screen. We have three excellent panelists. I'm going to get to answer some questions. There's one, there's two, there's three. All right. Now we're cooking. Okay. So we have three great panelists, and I'm going to let them do just a little introduction of themselves when they first pop on to answer some questions, just to tell you their scenario. Because we are talking about listening to and engaging with youth, we're going to let the most youthful member of the panel, David Edwards, who is still a college student, give us some insight about this and some of its practicality. So, David, would you tell us give us a little, 8 to 10 second intro of who you are and where you are, and then I've got a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, you're great.
Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. My name is David Anthony Edwards. Middle name isn't important. I just always feel like sharing it. And I am a senior at Gordon College in Wenham, Massachusetts. I'm a Christian ministries major. I'm a minor in biblical studies, and I'm pursuing a master's in theology for community transformation. Originally come from Eden Prairie, Minnesota. So go Vikings and Timberwolves if sports are your thing. But yeah, that's me.
Excellent. And I'll just name, I'm a proud parent of a daughter who just graduated from Gordon College in May. So thankful for Gordon College and the great folks there.
Right.
So David, what's something that you think maybe adults or just older generations misunderstand about how your generation and younger generations are experiencing your faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would start by saying I think it's really important to note the importance of intergenerationality when it comes to faith. I was talking to somebody earlier who helped me frame this, just the idea that the problems that my generation are facing aren't new. The way that we're handling them is just different. And so I think it's really important that we have people who have faced the problems that we're facing in our lives. In fact, we need them We need older generations in order to tackle what we're facing. But to answer the question specifically, I think something that some adults, or I think something that most adults are catching on to for sure, is that our generation is very spiritual. I think the thing that people misunderstand the most is the value of that spirituality. So,
Hmm.
as a Christian, I think that there's been a long-standing sense of theological superiority within Christianity when it comes to either other faith expressions or just other people in general that Jesus just never exemplifies. The only people that you really see Jesus going toe to toe with are Pharisees, and even then, it's because he's calling out their false sense of
Hmm.
superiority over the people they're supposed to be serving. So I think if more adults, because it's not everybody, but I think if more adults could understand that the increase in spirituality is our generation taking a step towards Jesus and not away from him,
Hmm.
that would radically change how we do ministry.
Yeah, and I hear you naming like a beautiful posture of humility in that, right?
Mm.
About the superior and how they're doing that. And I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves as well, Kris and Keedren, and see if you have any responses to David and his observation there.
No, that was great. I'm Keedren Boston, director here at the Bridge Frisco in Frisco, Texas, Dallas, if you don't know Frisco. And so been in youth ministry for over 2 decades, and it's definitely a passion, something that my wife and I feel called to. So grateful to work with youth and build with youth all over, really the world. It's been a blessing. Yeah, so I'm grateful to be here.
Mhm. Kris, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Kris Jordan, youth and community pastor here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I appreciate what you said, David, too, about the spirituality component and as it being a step toward, Jesus or towards faith that maybe adults or young adults don't understand what young people are kind of doing as far as their faith formation. And we see, something different from our context. But
Yeah. So Keegan, with your experience and maybe even playing off of some what David named there of youth uh, pursuing spirituality, and that even if it's not oftentimes in the same way the previous generations did, it is a hunger that we believe leads them to encounter God. Where are you seeing faith conversions or transformations actually taking place? In a real way, not just in a forest or just fitting into my religious community, but actually seeing transformation taking place within the life of youth.
Great question. Great question. I feel like where I've seen it is when we shift from teaching to listening, right? Because I know we as leaders, we have things that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God, right? And those of us that are sent to teach, people hear the word and their faith increases. Where things shift, I think for me, is definitely when we begin to listen to see what they actually know, what they have learned, and hear from them in that way. Being humble, being curious. I know that ministry context matters, environment matters. For me personally, we sit with students every Sunday in circles, and we ask simple questions to hear about them, to listen to them, to learn about their life, right? Because, so many times we can just throw a blanket message or a blanket series in the room. And there are different stories that are going on that may not even, what we are saying isn't even touching the ears and the hearts of the people that are in the room. So hearing and really learning about the stories in the room is important. And the only way we can learn about the stories in the room is if we listen to the stories that are in the room from the voices that are in there. So for me, it's when we stop trying to control the outcome. Because as teachers, you have a point. Like this is where we want to get to. Like that salvation, hands up, surrender. Like that is the work of the Holy Spirit. Like we cannot control that. And I think that's where it really works when we stop trying to control the outcome and stop and start listening to understand instead of listening to respond.
Yeah, and the listening as a leader and thinking about like shaping that ministry or as a congregational formation, this recognition that that youth, it's not that they're the future of the church. It's that they're the literal church right now.
Right now.
And so whoever you are and whatever you're trying to be, who you have right then and their questions, their thoughts, whatever, matter to who you are. And if you position yourselves at, I think some of what David was naming is this humility of that there is something to be learned in the lived faith experiences of our youth, then that I think that has like an impact on the broader church too.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Kris, any responses to sort of what Keedren's ideas are there, David said, or some insights from your own particular ministry context and the youth that you're working with?
Yeah, for me, in my context, I serve a lot of who would self-identify as atheist or agnostic youth. And so that's an interesting demographic, I think, to serve in a religious or faith-based setting. And it's something that I had to learn pretty quickly on is it's not that they're, anti-faith or anti, God or Jesus or learning about that, but it's the experience that they've seen in their local context. So it's like understanding the stories in the room, like Keedren's talking about. If I can't understand what these queer youth or trans youth might be experiencing at school on a regular basis from people who identify as Christian, who are hurting and harming them in some way, physically, emotionally, whatever, then I can't understand where to meet them in their faith exploration or spirituality. Like I can't, figure out that. So I think it's really important to kind of understand those local contexts, or, if something big has happened inside of our school system or family system, and we don't know about that, when they show up on Sundays, there could be ears off, and it takes some humility and some moments to like pause and settle in and be okay with things going maybe a little bit slower than we want them to, or the outcomes, like Keedren was saying, is to not control those outcomes and really be present in the lives of the young people that we get to serve.
Yeah. And you guys feel free to unmute and just jump in with whatever sparks you in the midst of that. David,
I was going to say, I'd love to add, Kris made a really awesome statement at the end there, just talking about presence. I think, and I'd seen a question in the chat too. I'm sure Megan absolutely answered that perfectly. It was a question of like, how do I connect with young people if I don't have a lot of young people in my space? And again, I just want to point to the life of Jesus. I feel like you can't go wrong talking about Jesus, right? He could have come to the earth as Lord knows what. God represented himself in clouds, in donkeys sometimes, and an audible voice, whatever, but he came as a baby, one that was wholly dependent on a woman. And I think that's significant. And then he spent 30 years not doing anything in terms of public groundbreaking ministry. And I think that and then he spent 10% of that time, right? Like actually speaking and going out, and then it ended in sacrifice. And I think ended in sacrifice and resurrection. Let me get the whole gospel there. And I think that blueprint is really significant. It's like, if you want to reach young people, if you want to connect with young people, or just people in general, I think it's like how much time are you willing to spend? Because the Great Commission isn't about converts, it's about discipleship. And then also like, what spaces are you willing to enter? Because like Kris said, it's about presence. And even like what Keedren said, it's about like hearing stories, right? It's like you can't kind of like the whole premise of Future of Faith is just the idea that like you can't learn everything that you need to know from a Gallup study. You have to have presence in space with the people that you're trying to reach. I think I'm kind of just circling around this point that it all like comes down to like, okay, like how did Jesus live his life? And Jesus lived his life with presence. He lived his life with humility. It was wholly incarnational, and it was self-sacrificing. And I think those things, there's definitely more, but I think those tenets of his life are how you really incarnate yourself into life of the youth.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. I'm also thinking about testimonies too. Like Jesus also shared stories, and I know I've seen personally, and myself either just telling what God has done as well, right? Because our testimony is very important, and I really try to do my best to help young people share, like know how to share their testimony, how God has changed their life, because ultimately that's how they overcome, by the blood of the Lamb, which is already done. The finished work of Christ is already done, and the word of our testimony, right? So it's like Jesus did his part. Now our part is to tell somebody about what he's done for us personally, because that's the thing. If God has brought me out of depression, anxiety, if he's brought me out of just being XYZ, right? I can share that, how I have overcome, with someone that has maybe dealing with that. And so those shared real stories help as well. So I just want to add that this is good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Kris, I love that you named that the youth you're working with, maybe ones that are traditionally are found outside of a normal faith community. They're the youth that maybe have felt excluded from or left out of other faith experiences. What sort of misconceptions do you find working with that group that people maybe in a faith community would have about what that work is, or how to be present for a different group that people may not encounter as much?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it kind of goes back to like Keedren's point, like the way that he's describing like the testimony and all that. That's language that I could hear, and in that exact way, maybe some of my kids wouldn't be able to hear that, but they can hear that your story is sacred, right? And so I can meet them there, and then maybe at a later date they can get to the point where they could change that to have or incorporate different language that's more, religious in context or Christian in its orientation. And so I think the maybe a misnomer or whatever that I encounter the most is that they really have a lot of reverence with the stories that we present, or with the engagement in like a scripture or a biblical narrative. Once that listening component is there, if I've listened to them and I've heard them and I've met them and I know where they're at, they can engage in that story. And if they don't necessarily digest it in a way that they would, walk out of that space and say, I'm a Christian. They know that they belong and that they matter and that their story is sacred. And because of that, they engage in a way that I think is maybe more of like the planting the seed type of thing. So, we may never see fruition as far as active engagement in the Christian faith or in it in the way that we might see. But, even to David's point a while back, is we might see that spirituality, that blossoming of an interest in the life of Jesus and the different ways in which they're understanding a Christian context outside of some of the environments that they experience as, behavior influence from other Christians, if that tracks.
Yeah, well, and just sort of wrap up some of the themes I'm hearing from this of like, if we're going to follow like what David's calling us to, right? Like, okay, well, let's simplify it. Like, how did Jesus go about embodying good news, right? What was this incarnation, the word become flesh, and being present with people, and this ability to make them feel valued and seen, and how that, even as that was in itself a reconciling and healing work, especially for people who weren't seen or heard, who weren't touched, the untouchables and the excluded from that. And so that's a really beautiful way of describing that, Kris, and thank you. Well, this is all the time we have for the panel. You guys have been awesome. Just want to highlight and especially go to faithfulfuturesbook.com where you can engage with the book and the resources. The Faithful Future Fund that we mentioned earlier, nominate somebody. We're looking for all of the great listeners that are out there and for people to submit them so that we can support them and honor them in all the ways that we do. And as always, go to futureoffaith.org, sign up for the newsletter. You're going to get lots of great free resources every month that appear and that are part of that. So thank you so much for being part of this today. Thank you for taking time out of this for your support of Future of Faith, and reach out to us. If you have questions, have ideas, we would love to get to know you and to hear about what's happening in your ministry context. So thanks, everybody.